Hello, colleagues. This synchronous presentation has been developed to walk you through and introduce you to the timeline, expectations, and supports that will be offered for February conferences and communications. As you know, every year we have two conference dates in February, and those are approaching. And yet, in our current circumstances, we do not anticipate being able to hold those conferences in person in arena style. So we'll be moving into our conferences much like we did in October. But before we go into that, I want to pause by going backwards and recognize first that typically in a typical school year, we will see around 300 or just under 300 families in our 3 dates of fall conferences. That is a historical number that I've seen for the last 3 years and was similar in the years prior. This year, we had 588 individual and specific contacts with families as a result of the survey that we sent out. And we know that all families received information and feedback on their students' progress and learning through our processes in fall conferences. So we not only nearly doubled or doubled our specific contacts, I can say with great confidence, all families received information and feedback on their students' progress in the learning. That's a tremendous improvement, and we appreciate all that you did to make that possible for October. Having said that, as we closed our October conferences, we reflected as that was our first iteration of conferencing and communicating in this manner, and wanted teacher feedback on the process and the reflections as we considered refining for February. So back in December, we brought this group of staff that are on the screen together, and they shared incredible and invaluable insights, as well as offered ideas around how we might design and think about February conferences. So again, before I move forward, I want to say thank you to this group for their invaluable insights, who have also helped develop some of the resources and supports that we will be offering to you in next week and the following week to support you as you move into conferences and communicating in the month of February with families. Having said that, I will also say this. We will be pausing other professional learning for the next couple of weeks as we focus on this work. As you know, today there's one asynchronous session from Ms. Nordgren, and then this asynchronous session. Next week, all of the conversations and supports will be around conferencing tools. So we are pausing our work on CBL, or our work on backwards design, which is not only important work for the future, but critical work as we design through this episode of EFL or modified teaching, should we return and when we return. But we're going to pause that work and focus on supporting you in this space and with this work for the next several weeks. So with that brings me forward. And let's start by looking backwards again. Historically, we see around 100 families, and this was true for the last 3 years because I stood there with a counter as families came to our February conferences. So in our 2 events, one evening, one day, full day conference, we would typically see about 100 families in February. This year, much like in October, I will say with great confidence that we will exceed that number and that all families will hear from us about their students' progress in learning, either through batch communication as personalized to their kid or through specific contact and communication as identified through the parent survey, much like we did in October. And when we do so, I just want to remind us that the critical elements in our communication when we talk about students, when we communicate students' progress in the learning, the critical elements should include the following. They should include qualitative data, grades, missing assignments, attendance, things that indicate quantitatively how their student is doing, as well as qualitative data, areas of strength, areas of support, how the student is doing with the material or learning in the class. That would be examples of qualitative data. And the third element that should always be included in this new way of communicating and conferencing with families is that there's always an invitation that informs parents how they can communicate in return or how they can connect with us should they have additional questions or should questions arise as a result of our communicating their students' progress in their learning. So with that, we're going to jump to the calendar. Let's take a look at the calendar for the month of January. The first thing I want to point out on here is while we are sitting on January 20th, I also want to point out that you see the grading window is stricken. It was strike through font on the grading window because we made a conscious decision to not have you spend energy putting grades into Canvas, but rather have that energy to put into Schoology grading, and preparing for conferencing. So we are not going to be posting grades into campus. We will not be posting a 6-week grading window into campus, again, to give you that time back now as we're looking into February and communicating with families. As you can see, we are providing an overview today for conferences, and then a parent survey will go out with the parent newsletter this evening. And we will keep that open through next Friday, the 29th of January. Next, between then and now, next Wednesday, we will offer very specific professional learning on tools for conferencing, as well as time to collaborate and plan for how you will do your conferencing and communication in the month of February. That is what is scheduled for next Wednesday, and only that. As we look at February, our intention is that you will receive your parent survey data by the 1st of February, Monday the 1st. That following Wednesday, we will offer some follow-up or some check-in times on the conferencing tools, but you are afforded time each Wednesday of February to work on conferencing and communication. And I'm giving you license to use your PM, your afternoons on Wednesdays, whether it's modified staff or EFL staff, to use that time for conferencing and communication with families. And that means you have to put an asynchronous work out there for students, so be it, but we want to capture the Wednesday afternoons for conferencing. Again, the professional development for Wednesday is really just opportunities for you to check in on the tools should you need, and those will be optional sessions to support staff, but you'll also have the morning on the 3rd as well. And then I want to identify the dates that are on the calendar for conferences this year. On the district calendar, we have February 11th as evening conferences and February 12th as day conferences. Now, I'm going to stop short of telling everyone when they must do their communications. I'm showing you on the calendar here what time has been set aside for it. That is a time that has been set aside. Your communication does not have to be confined to those times. And if you finish and don't need to use those times, that's acceptable as well. Now we're going to take a quick look at March, because we'll see that when we reach the end of February, we have 2 weeks to the end of the trimester and then spring break. So backing up to February again, we have set the 26th as our end date for communication with all families, so all families are aware of how their student is progressing in their learning this trimester by the end of the month. Now, the team that came together, they had some very strong recommendations, and one encouragement was that we might focus on our NY/NE students, or students who might be on a trajectory towards an NY or NE at the beginning of the month, so the first 2 weeks of February, and then shift to the students who have been more successful and needing less direct communication or encouragement or nudging or cajoling in the second half of the month. I leave that to you because that is really going to be some of the things you talk about individually as you plan out this month. Our purpose today is to give you a quick overview of the timeline and the schedule such that you can begin to marinate on it while we look out to next week to give you more specific support with resources and tools. So again, these are the dates that are on the calendar for conferences. Then I want to bring us to the dates that we've identified. I won't read through them all. You can see them on the screen here. But the 20th today, we're going to go give you a quick overview of the dates and the timelines and expectations for conferences. And then next week, we will lean in and do some work and support you with professional learning around the tools to support conferencing. And we'll offer follow-up optional sessions the following Wednesday, February 3rd, as well as time on that day, that day to begin your communication and conferencing. I remind you here that you have the Wednesday afternoons throughout the month of February, as well as the 2 explicit dates that are set up for conferencing. We believe that should be an ample time, but we also learned last time that this takes time. So we want to be sure that we afford time, and based on teacher feedback, we want to be sure we afforded enough time in the calendar for this. Again, next Wednesday, some of the things that we will be providing support on and learning on synchronously and asynchronously are listed here. These are categorical references, but we'll provide support on Calendarly, which is a tool we use for scheduling for families who want time, as well as some templates, communication templates, and tools you can use to increase the efficiency of this process, as well as resources for families while you're in communication with them. So I'm going to jump forward to something you saw last time. And I'll remind you that you will receive your parent survey spreadsheet, so you will be able to identify the parents that have asked for specific communication in a specific manner, phone, email, or WebEx. You'll receive that again, as we did last time. And you will receive an improved version of your roster spreadsheets from last time, where you can track your communication. What's different this time, based again on the feedback from our colleagues, is the spreadsheets this time will have the parent contact in the spreadsheet. So not viewed on the screen here, but to the right of the column I on this spreadsheets this time around will be parent email and parent phone number for parent 1 and parent 2. Now, some students have more than 2 parent contacts listed, but you'll have parent 1 and parent 2 email and phone numbers listed on the spreadsheet, so you can work directly off the spreadsheet and not have to go elsewhere to gather that information. So again, is an enhancement that came from the group of staff that came together and helped us reflect on and refine our process for this February. Once again, our goal is always to communicate how students are progressing in the learning so that there are no surprises or shocks at the end of the trimester. We're not often surprised, but sometimes parents are. So we want to be sure that parents are aware as we progress towards the end of the trimester. And again, as we get to the end of February, we only have 2 weeks remaining in the trimester. So I want to be sure that we are communicating student progress in learning to include quantitative data, qualitative data, and information on how parents can connect with us should they have questions as a result of that communication. Once again, we are certain we will well exceed our historical pattern and potentially set a new pattern. Our goal again is, as we go through this iterative process, to consider how we might do conferences in the future, and potentially not just conference on an arbitrary date on the calendar, but that our communications is clear enough as students journey through the trimester such that we may not need those arbitrary dates on the calendar. But again, our goal is that every family will receive communication, either specific to their preference or batch communication for those who had not responded to the survey, so that they are aware of their students' progress in learning. Again, as I wrap up, the dates on the screen are what we've set aside explicitly. Again, you are not confined to solely those dates. And if you are able to complete without using some of that time, hallelujah, good for you. These are the dates that we are setting aside to support you. And I also want to bring up this. Today's presentation was really just to walk you through as we prepare for next week, to give you more information and more supports and provide a high-level overview of the structures, the timelines, and the expectations around conferencing in February. I will hold an open WebEx today at 10:30 for anybody who has overview questions or questions at this time, initial questions. So we'll have that this time. Next week, next Wednesday, we will have additional opportunities to connect and to WebEx, open WebEx, for folks who have questions and or want to ask about tools or timelines. With that, let me close with this. I greatly appreciate the staff influence, insight, and refinement that was offered to improve our process. I know that we are conferencing in ways we never had before, but I also want to say we may be conferencing in ways we will be in the future. I don't know what 2021 looks like, but I am certain it does not look like 2019 and it doesn't look like 2020. So as we gain tools in our journey this year, we are preparing for a future that we're not totally sure what it looks like, but I am certain we are gaining skills and the tools to be successful in that environment. So thank you again for your commitment to kids and to each other. Have a glorious day and be well.